Hello there everyone, today's video is all about a recent court case which caught my eye, all about loan backs from pension funds to limited companies and how it can all go wrong. So, you've probably seen videos that I've done before where I talk about the possibility of pension funds loaning money back to the company of the director shareholder whose pension pot it is. And in fact, many people often say, particularly those of a certain age who are many or several decades away from being able to access their pension fund, they say, look, but what if I need to get my hands on the money? And you can say to them, well, if you're desperate to get your hands on the cash and there's no other means available, then yes, there are certain ways you can go about things to get money from your pension fund legitimately, as long as it's done in the right way. One of them being a loan back, where the pension fund makes a loan to the company, and another being a sale of certain assets of the company. But it's got to be done in the right way. This particular court case I'm going to tell you about was not done in the right way, and it came back to bite the directors on the ass in a big way, and they got clobbered for an unauthorized payment charge, which basically means that when you take money out of a pension and you shouldn't, because you're not of the age to do so, you get hit with a big charge from HMRC, which is about 50%, can be a bit more actually. So you can imagine half of the pot you're getting fined for taking it out too soon or not in the right way. So let's have a look at this particular case. Now, the limited company, director shareholder. Interestingly enough, actually, this case was all about not just one company, many companies. It was a financial advisor firm that advised its clients, its corporate clients, to do this, what I'm about to tell you, and it backfired horribly. But anyway, so there was not just one company, there was several. But let's just take, look at this one in isolation. So, director shareholder, got a limited company, got a pension fund, like thousands and tens of thousands of people out there. But this guy, the business was in a spot of bother, couldn't raise finance via traditional methods, couldn't go to the bank said no, couldn't do any director's loans, guy was not flush with cash. The only source of financing was the fact that he had a few quid in his pension. So the financial advisor, who, knew a bit about the rules, not enough as it's going to transpire, but talk to this guy about the two options where you've got the loan and then you've got the sale and various things. So specifically, there was 3 transactions that occurred in getting money from the pension pot into the limited company. And the 3 were this. 1, 2, 3. Number 1, loan back. Loan back. So when you do a loan back, when the pension fund loans money to the company, for it to work properly, there needs to be some security. It's got to be done on a commercial basis, various terms, and there has to be assets, secured assets for the loan. So the company, the pension fund, the trustees of the pension fund will have to take security over assets in the company. And the whole point of this planning was that the assets, well, this was like a service business. All right, so there weren't very assets. There wasn't hundreds of grand's worth of plant and machinery on the books, for example. So the IFA, who advised on this, came up with a bright idea that said, oh, hang on a minute, there's got to be some intellectual property owned by this company, such as client databases, a website, a domain, all these things that probably weren't even sat on the balance sheet because you don't recognize internal goodwill. You only recognize it from accounts when you buy it. So probably wasn't even visible on the balance sheet. But the bright idea of this IFA was to say, look, that's what we're going to secure the loan against, the intellectual property that belongs to the company. Oh, great. Okay, fine. So that's what they did. Set up the arrangements, the agreements. Security was taken based on the value of the IP. And someone went and they valued the intellectual property that this company owed. Fair enough. Number 2, sale and leaseback of IP. So, like we've already said, generally 2 ways to get your hands on pension money. If it's done the right way, before you're 57, loan it back, or a sale. So what was sold, certain bits of intellectual property were actually sold to the pension fund, okay, for cash. So cash moved into the company, and then the company leased back the intellectual property from the pension fund. So basically just a standard sale and lease back, which we see countless times, particularly with commercial property, but they did it with intellectual property in this case. So sold the IP to the pension and then leased it back. So that was number 2. Number 3 was the sale and licensing back of intellectual property. Pretty similar to sale and lease back, but slight variation legally. So selling the IP so that the pension fund, if you think about what was in the pension fund, it's going to swap its assets. So instead of having cash, it's going to own intellectual property to the tune of the value of the cash that's moved. Now here's the rub. So when all this emerged and HMRC got wind of this, and they said, let's have a look at the value that you're placing on the intellectual property in here. And they looked at it and they said, that's baloney, basically. They said, this isn't worth squat. Well, how can you say that this brand is worth so many thousand, where the brand was just a headshot of the director and a strapline, that the guy had. I mean, it was things like that. So it was quite nefarious how they came up with this IP. And when it went to the tribunal, basically the court sided with HMRC and they said, look, this intellectual property is way overvalued. So, the amount that you've got out of the pension fund exceeds the value, the true value of that intellectual property, and then some. So the taxpayer lost. Now, unfortunately, what that meant was that the nature of this payment from the pension fund into the company was not, in the tax world, a loan or a sale and lease back, but a good old-fashioned unauthorised payment charge that occurred on this unauthorised payment. So that's what it was. It was an illegal payment of money from the pension to the company, which they tried to do as these 3 things, but it didn't work. So for goodness sake, the takeaway from this is, if you're going to do anything like this, and it, like I said, if you get it right, you can do it. You can do the loan backs from pensions, and you can do selling of certain assets or shares into pensions if it's done right. But it's very specialist. You can't just call up your pension provider and say, "Oh, just lend us 20 grand, will you please?" I mean, you've got to go through so many hoops. These guys thought they were being pretty cute by documenting it all and said, oh, intellectual property, we'll get it valued. But the valuation, the way they went about it was all wrong. And it was kind of a half-assed way that they did when this was delved into, in terms of how much they assigned to brands and trademarks and everything else. This wasn't Coca-Cola or IBM. This was some ma and pa SME business that they overvalued the IP. So if you're thinking about doing this sort of thing, if you desperately need to get your hands on the cash that's in your pension and you've got years to wait before you hit 57, then for goodness sake, make sure you speak to an advisor, not the IFA that advised this outfit or these several people, but get an opinion, get a second opinion. But for God's sake, if you get it wrong, you are going to get shafted for this big style. Now, those unauthorised payment charges can be in excess of 50%. So let's say you try to loan back or sell 100 grand's worth to get 100 grand in here, you can end up getting hit for 50 grand penalties. So forget it. Just do it right. Do it properly. If you like this video, please do subscribe. And as always, I'll see you soon.